Greetings my friends, I am back again. This time I am going to speak to you on a very important aspect of disaster management planning, wherein I will introduce you to communication service and emergency operations center functioning. Let us see what exactly we mean by this, what is communication service and what is emergency operational center. Communication performs the job of coordinating relief operations in disaster situations. Communication and EOC, EOC is Emergency Operations Center, should not only be well planned but also be organized in advance. In other words, much before any disaster strikes. You may ask a question, why should we do this? Why should we do this beforehand? Like all other services, we will do this also at that time. No, by no means you should do that. You should do it well in advance and pre-plan. Why? For the simple reason, a communication service has got various wings, and emergency operations center is the main coordinating center wherein all these functions are coordinated. In other words, hotlines with 20 different organizations, hotline with the place of incident, hotline with your services, etc. should be organized. This if you try to do after the emergency, maybe by the time you have established an EOC or by the time your communication is organized, you may find the disaster has already stuck and it has gone much ahead than you. In other words, you have lost the race before the beginning. So, communication service and EOC helps the district magistrate, who is all in all, to control, coordinate various operations sitting at one place. This is most important, sitting at one place, and to take proper action to deploy various services for giving relief to the affected people. What exactly I meant by one place? He is already sitting at one place in his office. He is sitting no doubt in his place, one place in his office, but for connecting each and every time he has to go through one line. Whereas if he is sitting in a EOC, sitting at one place, he is in communication with 40-50 people at a given time. That is the difference, and that is why we say it helps in coordinating various operations. District magistrate by himself may not be in a position to take all decisions, and he may require advice and consultation with experts to take proper action. The EOC is a place where such action emanates. What exactly we mean by this is, a district magistrate may be having certain ideas, but he is not an expert on all the subjects. So, he requires advice on as to what to be done at a given situation at a given time, and that is possible when experts are sitting inside the EOC and they are able to guide him and tell him what exactly is to take place. That is the assistance that you get here. Communication service helps in mapping the disaster of the affected area for taking planned action at given places and deployment of various services accordingly. One of the important things that you should understand in this, though I will be talking to you a little later on in detail, at this stage all that I would like to tell you is, a district magistrate, let us say, is sitting in his EOC. He wants to know what exactly has happened in a given area. He has got two choices. One, he can go to the place where the disaster has taken place and then find out what exactly has taken place. The other one is sit inside the EOC and then look at a map of that given area, and that map is an enlarged map wherein markings have been done which shows how exactly the disaster has been stuck and what exactly is the damage that has happened. In other words, he gets a fairly good idea of the situation without even going to the disaster area. Any disaster needs quick and reliable information from the ground for not only deployment of services but also for giving authentic information so that panic and rumors do not spread. The major aspect which is taken care by communication service. In other words, what exactly we mean is, if we have proper information coming to us, we are also able to take proper action, and action needs to be taken quickly. That means message must come to me quickly, message must go out from me quickly, rather I can say orders must go out from me quickly, so that the information that has been received is acted upon in time. That is the main thing that has to be known to all of us. Now we come to the next aspect, and this we would call it as activity. The major activity of any communication service is to receive message either from Met department or ground, so that adequate deployment of relief services take place after assessing the damage in the sustained area. What exactly you mean by receiving message from MET? MET is the Meteorological Department of the Government of India. This is in a position to give us various details as to what exactly has taken place in different areas and how it is happened and what exactly is the situation. Apart from this, we also receive messages from the ground. So, we can extrapolate both of them and come to know what exactly is the situation. That is what is required for conducting any activity. Communication with other services and to coordinate their activities is a requirement in order to keep the authorities as well as the services informed about the progress being done. What do you mean by this? If and when I receive a message, I want to pass it on as in the form of an order, asking some services to go and some services to function at a given place. It is not enough if I just send some services. The services in turn are in touch with me. They want to tell you how exactly things are going on. In other words, it is a two-way traffic. That is possible thanks to communication. In order to achieve this, all heads of all response and relief services should be stationed in the EOC, that is the Emergency Operations Center, so that the magistrate oblique officer in charge can discuss and take the needful actions that are required for ensuring that relief services are deployed in time and action is taken in time. Now, we will go to the third aspect, what is known as organization. The communication service should have an officer in charge so that proper planning is done in advance for A, enrollment and training of volunteers. Here I would like to tell you something. The moment a disaster takes place, hundreds of volunteers are standing in front of me saying, I want to do something, I want to do something, I want to do something for the nation. But unfortunately, I can't use this huge force of I want to do something for the nation. Why is it that I don't want to take their help? The reason I don't want to take their help is they are not trained volunteers. What do you mean by trained volunteers? That means a volunteer who is trained has got some skills, and that is what is missing in them. So, well in advance, these so-called people who have come forward during a disaster should be encouraged, should be motivated, should be made to understand the situation and become volunteers. That is what is known as enrollment. And the other aspect is, once you have enrolled the volunteers, you start training them. So, that is what we mean by enrollment and training of volunteers. Then we come to the next aspect, type of equipment required by various services and formation of teams. Each and every team has got a specific type of equipment. For example, a rescue party has got a type of equipment, a fire service has got another type of equipment, a first aid party has got yet another type of equipment, and an ambulance has got something much more different. In other words, the type of equipment that is required by various services for forming a given team is also different in different cases. Then we come to the next aspect, planning and equipping an EOC, so that action can be taken for receiving the messages and deployment of various services. What do you mean planning and equipping an EOC? The moment I started the lecture, I told you, you have to establish the EOC during peacetime or before disaster. That is what I mean by this, planning and equipping. How am I going to have the EOC? What are the things that are required? How many hotlines are required? Where is my district magistrate going to sit? Where will I have the map? Etc. etc. In other words, I may be required to spend some time in knowing what are the activities that are required to be taken. EOC should also have heads of essential services like electricity, water supply, fire services, sewage system, gas, police, industries, municipal corporation, etc. etc. Now, let us take few of them. What exactly we mean is, we as citizens are used to certain services without which we become absolutely handicapped. Electricity, water supply, fire, these are some things, sewage, gas, police, telephone, industries, these are again some other services, municipal corporation. In other words, if any one of these services is not functioning, you will find that we are handicapped. So, in order to ensure that this sort of a thing does not happen, we have essential services heads. Why we are having the heads, that I will come to a little later on, but at this stage it is enough for you to know that Emergency Operations Center has essential service heads stationed inside the EOC, so that district magistrate can order and not complain. The difference between order and complaint is order is given to implement, complaint is given to request, please do it. That is the difference. The above heads of services are placed in EOC so that in case of emergent necessity they can be contacted and take care and do the needful to rectify the situation. In other words, in a huge disaster like this, the complaining part is out, the ordering part is in. But if the ordering part is to be in, I must have the head of that service or the representative of that service available to me, so that I can talk to him, discuss with him and order him and tell him I want this thing to be achieved. That is the reason why heads of services are also kept here. Organization. Selection of site for creation of EOC is a task by itself, and at times one EOC may not be enough to cover the entire area of destruction. This may require additional subordinate EOCs for better management of situation. What exactly we mean by this is, when you are trying to select an EOC, you have to select the site of a particular building or a particular area where you are going to have the EOC. That itself is a big task. Then you come to the next aspect, that in case of a huge situation where a tsunami has taken place, where a cyclone has taken place, where an earthquake has hit, you mean to say one EOC is enough? No, you may be requiring more EOCs. So, subordinate EOCs. So, where I am going to place these things? In other words, selection of these EOCs and making them functional is a task by itself. This sort of planning in advance can help in deployment of help the services, and we have to prepare a template which can be of great use in this regard. I have discussed with you template in one of my earlier lectures, but all that is sufficient to say is, a template has got two forms. One is a template which is prepared based on earlier disasters, which you place on your map and then say, okay, this can happen. Now, once that has been decided, you have to prepare a subsequent template to say, if this has happened, if this is the area that is going to take place in my place, which is the vulnerability area, which is the hazardous area, which is the risk involved. So, once I come to these things, this second template that I have prepared is the one which gives me this detail, and that is why I said I have discussed with you template in detail in an earlier lecture, and you should not ever forget this template and its usefulness. We come to the next. Since relief and response of services require vehicles to move about and equipment also doing various tasks, the fact that volunteers, that is the teams, for manning such services should be kept at a place. This is known as a depot transport service of EOC. Every EOC normally will have its own depot and transport service. What I mean to try to say in this is, you can't have a rescue service or a fire service or a first aid or an ambulance walking around. You need vehicles for that, and these vehicles should be kept at some place. It needs drivers, it needs petrol, it requires maintenance. It also needs equipment for these services to function. Now, for all these aspects, we must have somebody responsible for something, and that somebody responsible is known as depot transport service. This depot transport service is an additional requirement for any EOC. In other words, it is an attached aspect to the EOC, and every EOC will have its own depot. Why? So that they have the required services, that is the relief services, on their hand, and they can deploy it as and when required. That is the advantage of having a depot and transport service attached to the EOC itself. In continuation of the organization, needless to emphasize that EOC should work 24 hours a day, and hence staff should work an 8-hour shift. What exactly we mean by this is, all the 24 hours the EOC should be functioning. How is it possible? It is possible only when you have the staff working in shifts. That means there are 3 shifts of 8 hours each, and once they are working thus, the staff should be provided place to stay. Staff provided should be available within the EOC during an emergency, which means dormitory type of arrangements, canteen facilities should be provided, and they should also have other recreational facilities, etc., so that they are staying there in a comfortable manner. They may not be having a luxurious stay, but they should definitely have a comfortable stay. It is not enough to create an EOC, since you can never guarantee that given area where the EOC is located is not affected. What exactly we mean by this, I will explain to you. This situation could create a dangerous situation wherein we do not have an EOC in time of need. However, this can be overcome by a shadow EOC. What I mean by this is, let us say you put in lot of hard work, you create a EOC. Can you guarantee that a disaster will not take place in that area where the EOC is located? You can never guarantee this. So it may so happen that you did lot of homework, you did lot of good work, and you did lot of functional work, but it all got wiped off because of the disaster taking place in that given area. So you can't say, sir, I had done the job, but my EOC is not there, so what should I do? That is where we talk in terms of a shadow EOC. Now let us see what exactly is a shadow EOC. A shadow EOC is an alternate control room provided in order to ensure that work goes on irrespective of damage being caused to the existing EOC in a disaster. In other words, we create a shadow control room by nominating one of the additional control rooms created for taking additional load as the main control room, till such time our main control room becomes effective once again. This sort of arrangement is known as a shadow EOC. What exactly we mean is, a little earlier I told you, a given area may not be possible for us to have only one EOC. So we may be having 2 or 3 EOCs. So if I am having 2 or 3 EOCs, the other EOC can be given as an alternate EOC for the main EOC, and I can say this is a shadow EOC in case of the first one failing. In other words, I have earmarked one more EOC as a main EOC in case something happens to my main EOC. That earmarking is known as shadow control or shadow EOC. So this is a very important thing, because we do not want, repeat, we do not want things to come to standstill because my EOC has been washed off, because it has been destroyed, because it has been damaged. I must have an alternate situation wherein orders are, analyzing situations and then orders are issued. In other words, a shadow control room has its own effectiveness if and when needed. We now come to the next part after organization, administration. Let us now see what exactly is administration in this aspect. Officer in charge communication has to plan various aspects such as enrollment of volunteers required. This I talked to you a little while ago. Equipment required. This is very, very important, because you may be talking in terms of telephones, you may be talking in terms of wireless equipment, you may be talking in terms of motorcycles, you may be talking in terms of maps, you may be talking in terms of tally boards, which we will be talking little later. In other words, everything connected with passing and ordering of orders on messages received is dependent on how exactly you are equipped. But the most important is training of volunteers. A little earlier I told you, I may have large number of volunteers at a given time, but they are of no use to me because they are not skilled. This business of skill is going to take time. Now my friends, as teachers who are being given this chance to undergo this training, I want to put in a little seed in your mind. What is that? Asking you to undergo the course is not a big thing, but training you, which is a subsequent action, to make you a member of a particular team is a big thing. Why is it a big thing? Here in 15-20 days after listening to my online lectures, you have become aware of the situation. But for getting trained, you may require 6 months. 6 months of 3 hours each in a day or 10 hours in a week, etc., etc. Now that 10 hours or 6 months is what is going to decide between a trained volunteer and an untrained volunteer. Now that is what is going to take time. Why am I specifying going to take time? In other words, if I am going to take, let us say, 6 months for training 200 volunteers, and I require 2 lakh volunteers for meeting a situation, please understand what a difficult task I have and how difficult it is to train these volunteers. So the earlier you start, the better it is. Don't wait for the situation to happen and then say, I am going to do it now, because if you are going to do it that time, you are going to definitely fail, and your failure will create large amount of problems. So don't do that. Augmentation of volunteers. What do you mean by augmentation? Merely taking volunteers from public itself is not enough. I should look for organizations which already have volunteers. Who are these volunteers? Civil Defense, Home Guards, NCSA and other NGOs. All these 4 organizations that I mentioned have their own volunteers. These volunteers are available. Now you will say, why not police, army, etc. No, don't talk about police, army, etc. for augmentation, because these organizations have got their own role play. They got their own work. They cannot be disturbed. So volunteers available in civil defense, home guards, NCC and other NGOs, we got to tackle and take out volunteers from them for augmenting. In other words, if I needed 2 lakh volunteers, I have 1,50,000 of them. I can take 50,000 them from civil defense, home guards, NCC and NGOs. Thus make up. That making up is known as augmentation. This has been planned in advance. Why? Why can't we do it in disaster? When do you plan? When do you take these volunteers? When do you start working? And when do they become skilled? So entire thing will be a fiasco. So this has to be planned in advance in Disaster Management Act, which empowers such augmentation. In other words, you may say, how will the civil defense, NCC and other NGO organization, will they listen to us? Yes, the Disaster Management Act and rules provide you such situations wherein it gives you powers to create this. The district magistrate can order these services, but coordination in a time when the disaster has not taken place, that means before disaster, is necessary for achieving this augmentation. Creation of hotlines between various organizations. Thanks to the fact you got a mobile today, you might have forgotten the good old days when you got a landline. To get that landline, you had to go through large amount of difficulties, and even when one telephone was sanctioned to you, they used to come up and say the line is not there in your area. So in other words, creation of hotlines is not such a small thing. You got to have a line, you got to have a telephone, you got to contact that. Of course, wireless situation has brought in a lot of help, but within few hours you can't have hotlines. You may require a day or two, and that is why this is needed. Use of wireless equipment. Needless to say, wireless equipment is a great boon, but using a wireless equipment and handling of a wireless equipment, purchasing of a wireless equipment and keeping a wireless equipment intact is a job by itself. So this is something that has got to be thought of. Prepare and equipping an EOC before a disaster so that it can be brought into 100% use during an emergency situation. This is what I kept on telling you today repeatedly. In other words, if you want a EOC to function, you got to think and prepare when? Before the disaster strikes, not after the disaster strikes. This is necessary in areas affected by cyclones, regular floods as well as critical earthquake situations. Let us now go to the next important aspect that is of communication, that is warning. Now the most important aspect of EOC, since both connected with officials and public have to be warned about an impending disaster. For this we should have adequate warning arrangements. Here mark my words, I have said most important aspect of EOC, connected A with officials and B with public. In other words, there are two people who are involved in this. As regards initial warning is concerned, Central Met Department, that is the Meteorological Department, central government, has been entrusted with this task, and they provide the type of warning to be issued both to officials as well as public at large in the local language, means whatever is the language that is used in that given place, given area, by use of fax messages and official to officials and television for officials and public. But here I would like to tell you something else. The thing that you should know is, I will give you an example. For example, a Central Met Department language in which you will get a cyclone warning is 150 kilometers gale wind blowing will take place in so and so area from so and so time to so and so time. Now this is a warning given, and public are hereby warned to evacuate that area. But what is a gale wind? What is 150 kilometers to do with it? This has to be explained to the public in depth. How? By going and talking to them and making them understand by means of radio, by means of posters, by means of volunteers, wardens, which we have discussed earlier, so that they come to know. Otherwise, sitting in a cyclone prone area, most of the coastal areas are cyclone prone areas. If you keep on thinking every time Central Met Department has given a warning, they will have to evacuate, maybe in every monsoon affected area or whenever there is a cyclone warning given, they will have to vacate their places. That is not the case. You have to inform them this is going to take place and this is necessity, and this is what is to be done. In other words, I am dividing the warning into two parts, one by the Central Met Department, the other one by the officials of that area under command of the district magistrate, so that they can go talk. And this, my friends, I am telling you with experience, because I have seen in many of the cases the Met Department has given the warning, they have given it in the local language, but its implementation will become difficult because the people at large were not able to appreciate it, and that appreciation has to be made to them by people going, contacting them and telling them in advance what exactly is the situation. However, standardizing and ensuring that it reaches all concerned quickly, and also that public understand its importance so that they can cooperate in official activities such as evacuation, etc. In other words, if you merely say, I am going to evacuate, first question anybody is going to say, why, where, how. In other words, you got to take them into confidence. That is where we said community participation in disaster management. Here we are saying all concerned quickly, and public understands. Understands what? Why a particular job is to be done. That is what we mean by the understanding. The activity also consists of passing additional information such as wind direction, speed of wind, area of total destruction, which is derived from the template prepared in this regard, which gives the accurate information along with the warnings that have been given. In other words, I standardize the warning given by the Met Department and put it into a template, and then say, now I got specific information. Earlier template was hypothetical, but now I got specific information, and on that I am preparing this thing, and this is going to be the area A, area B, area C of damages. That is what is important, and that is where I can think in terms of saving people. In the above information, it is absolutely necessary to understand the amount of damage that is likely to be created in a given area, since public takes wait and watch attitude. What do you mean by wait and watch attitude? A little while ago I told you, if you are in a coastal area, you will like to know whether this cyclone is more heavier than the one which had come earlier, or is it going to be more destructive than the one which had come earlier. That is what we mean by wait and watch. Hence we require trained wardens in the form of volunteers along with police to go about explaining the type of disaster and its effects, so that public understands and cooperates instead of wait and watch. The activities of wardens and their selection has been discussed in earlier lecture, but I would like to only say one thing. This is a situation where a selfless character who is interested in doing some work for the people at large can only be becoming a warden, because if he is interested in what we call running away or palayan in Hindi, then he cannot be a warden. You must be able to say, I will stay here, I will talk to people, I will help them, and I will go last. That should be your interest as a warden. Now we come back to augmentation again. Since disaster management talks of augmentation, it is worthwhile taking a leaf out of civil defense control room, wherein the system of warning connected officials and public is done by using what is known as an ARP equipment. What exactly I am trying to tell you is, civil defense has been an organization which has been existing in this country since the 1950s, and they have got a equipment known as ARP equipment, which is presently available in large number of telephone exchanges, and where it is not available, Indian telephone industries, which are the persons who are manufacturing them, can be asked to present this. What I am trying to tell you is, since augmentation has been given to us in disaster management, we can not only augment the people, we can also augment their equipment, and the equipment which is with the exchange, telephone exchanges, that is the ARP equipment. In view of the fact that ARP equipment is available in large number of Indian cities, in the existing telephone exchanges, the same could be augmented for our purpose, and additional ARP equipment could be manufactured by Indian telephone industries, who are the agencies for doing the same. To put in nutshell, what exactly, you will ask me, natural question that comes to your mind, Arey, we have been told something new, ARP equipment, augmentation, what is this all about? To put it in nutshell, ARP equipment comes in two formats, namely main station equipment and substation equipment. The main station equipment can connect 144 telephones simultaneously with one telephone in EOC. Remember this fact that I am telling. One telephone being lifted in EOC can operate 144 telephones. How exactly it is done, I will tell you a little later after I explain to you this particular thing. The main station equipment connects 140 volt telephones simultaneously with one telephone in EOC, and a switch in EOC can activate 24 sirens. But if I want more number of telephones and more number of sirens, a substation equipment can connect 72 additional telephones with 24 more sirens from a telephone and switch kept in the EOC. This facility is a great boon, since we can talk to so many important officials by just lifting one telephone in the EOC and inform public at large, sounding sirens by pressing one button in the EOC. Now, what exactly I meant by main station and substation equipment? You have got your telephones, and those telephones are all connected through telephone exchanges. The only thing is, this telephone exchange, which is automatic, is connecting them, disconnecting them. But if it passes through this ARP equipment of mine, then a beautiful thing happens. If and when the telephone in the EOC is lifted, all your telephone connections will get disconnected, because they are now being activated on the ARP, and the ARP will now be giving only the message only that is being transmitted by the EOC and not by anybody else. In other words, your telephone is one-to-one with the EOC. Similarly, I am operating a button. That one button of mine is taking care of the entire situation of warning people. If I find the number of people are more and I want to have more number of telephones or more number of sirens, I can have a substation equipment. Now we come to the next. In conclusion, I have discussed with you activity, organization, administration, warning and augmentation. The above aspects of communication service and its concept gives us a fairly good idea as to how exactly communication functions in a disaster situation. The important aspect to be noted is that all aspects are interlinked, and failure to properly organize any one of the above aspects will adversely affect our planning. In other words, if I leave one and go to the third one and leave the third one and go to the fifth one, I will find that my planning will become haphazard. So, failure to properly organize any one of the above aspects will adversely affect our planning and in turn lead to failure in implementation. Most important. Hence, it is imperative that we should take totality in all aspects and sincerely implement them in order to achieve the expected results. Well, friends, I have given you in detail a few of the things that are required to be kept in mind when we talk in terms of communication service and various functioning aspects of it. Thank you very much.